Hello, and welcome to Akron Community Voice. My name is Kat McDaniel, and we're here today with another collaboration from NAACP Akron Power and Community Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Lathartis Goggins II and Judy Hill.
Thank you, Kat. Well, welcome to the NAACP Power and Community Podcast. It's a podcast that focuses on all important issues and topics that affect our community and here in the Akron area. We believe that knowledge is power and organized power makes change happen. I'm Judy Hill, President of the Akron Branch NAACP, and with me today,
I'm Dr. Lathartis Goggins II, the second Vice President of the NAACP and the Education Chair.
We are here today with Beth Vild. Correct?
Yes.
Good. Beth Vild from, Beth does so much work in the community around environmental justice. But one of the things I'm most proud of right now is that Beth has agreed to chair the Akron NAACP Environmental Justice Committee. And as you listen to her today, you'll know why she was selected for this role. So, Dr. Goggins?
Sure. As you know, in this episode, we'll be talking about environmental justice. And environmental justice is one of the pillars of the Hour 25, the National NAACP initiative. One of the things that is a part of the Hour 25 initiative when it comes to environmental justice is to advocate for strategies to address the proliferation of climate change and the systematic impacts on communities of color and low-income communities. So when we think about the idea of environmental justice, what does that mean?
And before we get into that, Beth, could you give us a little background on you and how you got into this environmental work? Just a little bit, okay?
Certainly. So, yes, my name's Beth Vild. I help run the Big Love Network, which is an Akron born organization. I started, I've always done work around community organizing and health. Everyone in my family are healthcare providers of some sort, and I've always I always have seen how oppression shows up in the body, right? And I started off coming to Akron and moving to Akron in order to work out of a space called the Way of Mind and Body, or the Womb, that Ace actually used to head up our weekly open mic nights for. And through that, I ended up helping to run the community garden and doing a lot of the health programming out of there. And this is also the space that Freedom Block got started out of, right? And so as we were organizing, the people that now make up the Freedom Block, including several others that have branched off to do other things in life, we're really working on issues of mass incarceration. As we were working on issues of mass incarceration, we couldn't help but notice how environmental factors affected people's health and well-being, and how these were systematic decisions that were made downtown and at the State House and in D.C.
Great.
And not by the people that were most affected by it.
Awesome.
So Big Love got started kind of with that understanding and in that space of knowing that we had to look at urban design, we had to think about who was put closest to industry and farthest away from green spaces, and also how that affects access to food and a number of other things. So that's really how we got started off.
Good. So that gives us an idea of your background. So tell us what you believe environmental justice really is about.
So environmental justice to me is really about being intentional about our environmental advocacy, right? So instead of just fighting for the environment at the national park or in the valley, right? Fighting for it in East Akron, right? a lot of people want to call themselves environmentalists, and really they like to escape into nature. They don't necessarily care about how man-made environment affects people every day.
Sure. I know as we look around the world, and you're right, taking care of this environment and fighting for climate change issues, we forget about how it impacts Black and brown communities. We forget about all of the initiatives that are placed or businesses that are placed in our communities that impact us in a negative way. And it's systemic, and you can find it all over. Can you tell us about one or two of those issues that we have actually experienced in Akron, and one we're getting ready to?
Exactly. So Akron, the basis, and this is part of how Big Love is born and bred out of Akron, because the basis of Akron as a city is environmental racism. So what happened 100 years ago is that the city had tripled in size because of the rubber industry, right? When the Cyberlings decided to make downtown, because before there was downtown, there was just Middlebury, which was a town off the canal, right? And the canal is an example of environmental racism towards Native Americans, and that's a different conversation that we could have. But when the Cyberlings decided to make the hill downtown, where we're on right now, right? Downtown, that was in part because they put all of the industry right on the east and south sides of that hill. And the way that the wind blows is northeast in Akron. And so that means that the northwestern side of the hill was not affected by the smog of the rubber industry. And so they put Black and brown people closest to the rubber industry, and then Appalachian and Catholic immigrants close to the red line neighborhoods. And we can talk about what redlining is later. But and that decision was made 100 years ago because there was something that had happened in downtown Akron, and that was a coup, a complete takeover of our local government by the Ku Klux Klan. And so when Klansman Mayor Reibold took office, he elbowed out everybody that had been there doing any work around housing.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Took out everybody that had been there doing it, and then put in his folks. And when he put in his folks, those people went on to have 30-plus year careers, right? So they're the ones who decided what neighborhoods were going to be redlined.
Sure.
They're the ones that decided where African Americans were going to be placed in our community as we recruited them from Alabama, and where people that weren't white Anglo-Saxon Protestant were going to be put around the city. And so what we see as accumulation of that, of 100 years of those practices, right? Because they set the bar. When people downtown in urban planning say, this is the way we've always done it, that is code for this is the way the Klan says that we should do this 100 years ago, and we're still doing it that way. So part of that is the main industrial area of Akron is right next to East Akron. The way that East Akron is shaped is kind of like a bowl. So the air pollution in East Akron just stays there for a little bit longer than it would if it wasn't shaped that way, right? So that's the reason why we see the worst health disparities in our city in East Akron. The Big Love Network did an environmental health assessment of the city back in 2020 because we had to divert some of our door knocking dollars into other things. And we wanted to make sure that we were doing the work in the right places. And so the number one neighborhood that popped up for us that was an issue was East Akron. So about 2-ish years ago, I got a phone call from an organizer in Columbus saying, hey, there's this really awful plant that's burning plastic, and they don't have to adhere to the Section 129 of the Clean Air Act. And it's in Akron, and we're trying to gear up to fight around it. And I said, let me guess, it's in East Akron. And she said, absolutely. And so that fight is coming to a head on May 28th. And we can, is this a good time to go into that, or should I wait?
Well, I want to make sure. So that issue is one.
That's one.
There's another issue about the plant
Right.
that they want to add to East Akron as well, correct?
Well, there is another issue in East Akron is the waste transfer station. The waste management, or formerly waste management, now they go by WM. They have a legacy waste transfer station that is older than they are as a company. It started there in the 70s. That is off Fountain Street, right in Middlebury. So still Ward 5, right? But not East Akron, right? So it's affecting a slightly different demographic than it would in East Akron. And they decided that they're going to move that way, that they're going to build a new waste management facility or waste transfer station, and that they're going to put it in East Akron. And this is, and while the facility will be a million times better than what we have currently as far as like environmental standards and things like that, it still also doesn't need to go in East Akron. We need to stop dumping in East Akron. East Akron also, Joy Park, which is the main
Absolutely.
park there,
Sure.
is on top of a dump, and they have to release the methane
Somewhere.
into the air from the clay cap that's on top of the dump there. Like, we do not need to keep perpetuating the health problems that are being caused by industry in East Akron, and we seem to just keep dumping and adding more things there.
Just real quick, you say there's a park there, but there's also housing
Thank you.
there as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, in the Joy Park area that is built next to or built on that former dump site.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, and then there's also housing right next to where Alterra Energy is, which is the factory that is burning plastic in the neighborhood, burning plastic waste in the neighborhood. And it's also across the street from where that chemical fire in September last year was. And it's still within the same mile of where the waste transfer site is going. And it's row housing. It's called Chesapeake, Rosemary, and Erickson are all in this
Same.
unit, right? And they're getting dumped on the most right now. And I can tell you from door knocking there that everybody there is sick. Anybody that is little or older, ill.
Interesting. This just helped me out here because as a novice to this, right? You said a couple of different things that I want to kind of just highlight and then let you ask you some questions on.
Sure.
But you started off talking about environmental justice, and I think for the layperson, myself included, a lot of that to me comes to the idea of national parks and making sure that the rainforest is around and making sure that we have flowers for the bees and stuff like that, right? But you went into some other things, particularly this history of the Klan and how redlining. So I'm beginning to hear environmental justice and environmental issues as being this intersection with class, with racism, with schools, housing, and even economics.
Yes.
This,
Yes. So the environment. So I think when we talk about the environment, we have a tendency to really whitewash it, right? And white environmentalists are responsible for that. Let me make sure I call my people out on that, right? That we only think about the national parks and the rainforest and things like that, right? And that is an important aspect of what gets done. And even the work that I'm doing or working on in East Akron is also about handing out trees and helping to do micro reforestation within the neighborhood and different things like that, because people need access to food, people need better air quality, all of those types of things, right? But the environment is everything around us. It is the ultimate intersection, right? And when you study and understand more natural systems, you're like, wow, the environment really is the cross-section of all of these things. So like when we did our environmental health study of the city, one of the pieces that we were missing the most of, because there's not much being recorded around this, is police interactions. Because policing is part of the environment. It creates the emotional environment of an area, and it creates the circumstances and outcomes that directly affect safety. Right? And when a good environment is an environment we feel safe in. Right? A good environment, I say this all the time, when we trash neighborhoods, right? Like not just with littering and things like that traditional environmentalists will talk about, but even with vacant properties, right? The 2008 housing collapse was a major environmental issue, right? Housing is a major environmental issue. I mean, the folks at the Rosemary and Erickson and Chesapeake Apartments, their housing is in really bad shape. They have black mold. They've got issues since the fire. Their HVAC systems have soot in them, right? Their carpets all have soot in them. Those are all environmental issues. This room is our own micro environment.
Right. So broadening that understanding of what environmental justice could include helps people to look at it differently.
Right.
Because when we look at us as a whole, I too, as an educator, I get tired of the way we try to segment life like it's separate. No, it isn't. It's all a big pie.
Right.
And it all impacts the other pieces.
Well, and also, so even when we talk about tree canopy in East Akron, I think a lot of people can understand we need more trees so that the air quality is better. But people don't necessarily also understand that we need more trees so that people can eat from them. We should be planting more fruit trees. And that also, we need more trees because we need shade. What happens in urban environments that have a lot of concrete and blacktop is that it gets really hot. Like, we're pretty hot in here right now. Right. And it's because these lights and the black walls, right, hold that heat. They hold that heat and they keep things warm, right? And so when that happens in like a whole neighborhood like East Akron, right, and there's not enough canopy to cool it down a little bit, or for it to like change the air quality so that it feels cooler, right? It ends up being almost 10 degrees hotter on certain days in East Akron than it would be on the wealthy west side. Wow. Right?
The heat
and
island
heat island effect. And what that does to people's moods, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm really hot, I get angry. I'm like half Italian. That Italian anger comes out of me, And I think that's true for everyone. But also, one thing that NPR has been really good about putting news out there around is that it also cancels out some people's mental health prescriptions. So, and especially for folks that have paranoid schizophrenia. Oh, wow. And so when we see that these cop shootings happen when it's really hot out with people that are mentally unstable.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I would never make that kind of connection.
Never.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I went to a conference in New York, now that you mentioned that, and the one thing that drove me nuts, there were no trees. The first thing I did when I came back to Akron, I was like downtown in New York, and I'm sitting there, and I go to my conference, and then we walk out, and there's people everywhere. No trees, no natural air, nothing. The first thing I wanted to do was kiss the ground. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have trees. You don't realize and appreciate greenery until you don't have it. And we truly, I missed it that much. And I thought, can't live in New York, because of that reason. Yeah, so it does make a difference. Absolutely.
We'll get some resources on the website for everybody.
Yeah.
And we just want to thank everybody for listening. And our next episode will be coming up. And so
Beth will be chairing our NAACP Environmental Justice Committee. We're going to start having committee meetings. And so if you're really interested in this work, please contact the Akron NAACP at naacpakron.org, and we will get you connected.
Sure.
So thank you for joining us as we shed light on this very important environmental justice issue. Clean air, safe water, and healthy neighborhoods are not privileges. They are our right. Too often, communities of color bear the brunt of environmental harm, but together we can demand better. I'm Judy Hill.
And I'm Dr. Lothardus Goggins II. Environmental justice is community justice. Let us continue to raise our voices and hold polluters accountable and build a more sustainable and equitable Akron for generations to come.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
And little Beth.
You can watch this and other episodes of Power and Community Podcast on YouTube and wherever you get all your favorite podcasts. My name is Kat McDaniel. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.
Check out the BU Podcasting community at bupodcasting.com.